Hello, hello, everybody. So, we are back for another career and spirituality conversation. So, I'm Julie Pone, your host. And for those of you who don't know me yet, I support spiritual beings having a career experience to reconcile what they do for a living with who they are at soul level. And today, to help me out in this mission, I'm honored to talk with Joseph McGuire. Hi, Joseph. How are you today?
Hi, Julie. Lovely to see you.
Yes, yes. Nice to see you again. It's been a long time.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Yes,
yes.
I like when these conversations get me to, reconnect with old connections, with connections from the past. So that's going to
Yep.
be super cool. I'm excited for it. And as you know, most of the audience know that we're always starting by 1 or 2 minutes grounding, and you kindly offer to guide us through it today. So on these words, I'm handing you the mic. So I'm ready to
Okay.
sit down and relax.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'd like to ask everybody to just place one hand on the heart. Place your left hand on your heart, if you would, and your right hand on the lower belly. And just start to breathe slowly and deeply in. Ideally, breathe in through the nose. So take a slow, deep in breath. And as you breathe in, just feel your belly expanding a little. Just hold the breath for a few moments. And then let it flow slowly out through the mouth. And just let your body take on that slow, deep, easy feeling of breathing. Let it flow in and out of the body like a wave. And just allow yourself to tune into being in your body. Feel your feet firmly on the ground, on the floor. And just imagine you're really connecting with the earth below you. So regardless of where you may be listening to this, imagine your feet are connecting directly with the earth. And you're sending roots down into the earth. So you're really grounding yourself. You're feeling deeply connected with the world in a very positive, very nurturing way. And as you breathe, you're feeling that energy coming up through the earth also. You're feeling it filling your body. And you're feeling your heart open. You're allowing your heart open to yourself, to your possibilities, to the magic, the joy, the wonder inside. And you're allowing life to reveal itself to you through your heart. And it's all happening with great ease. It's very gentle. No effort, no force, just slow, deep, easy, and gentle. The breath just flows in and out of the body like a wave. It's entirely natural. And just set the intention for this breath to continue to flow effortlessly in and out of the body like a wave through the remainder, not just of this session here, but through the rest of your day. And allow your heart to continue to gently open to yourself in particular, so you connect again with the joy, the wonder, and the magic of who you are. And simply relax into that. So I'd like you now to just bring your attention back to being wherever you are, whatever room, wherever you may be sitting, or walking, as the case may be. And just bring your attention to being present in your daily being. And allow that energy to continue to flow as you go about your daily business. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. What a treat. What a treat for me, starting this session. Just enjoying the grounding. That was wonderful. Thank you, Joseph. So now, now that I got you to do some work already, I may as well
Indeed.
keep going. So, Joseph, you used to be a holistic therapist, like I used to myself as well, but nowadays you are facial profiler and body language expert.
Yep.
And that sounds super intriguing and interesting. And I'm curious to know how, what has been your progression towards this. But before we talk about that, I like to start about knowing what's your perspective on spirituality and what's your personal definition of spirituality. What does it mean to you, so that we know where you stand on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Profound question. And it's a challenge to express that in English, because English is not a language naturally given to the spirit. It's not a conscious language. And I know people use words like God, but to me, God is a word that has no energy to it. So a friend of mine many years ago used to refer to the great everywhere spirit. And it was a term I resonated with. And for me, it implies a greater consciousness, a greater awareness, a greater loving energy to the, for want of a better term, the universe around us. And I know Einstein once asked the question, or said that the main question to ask ourselves is whether we see the universe as loving or otherwise, or something to that effect. And for me, if we see the universe and the world around us as a loving place, it's a place where we can experience wonder, we can experience joy, we can experience awe, we can experience literally the magic and the miracle of being. I'm aware I've looked at life from a lot of different perspectives, as I guess we all have, and I was fascinated by the work and the lives of great physicists of the last century, and I know several of them studied the Bhagavad Gita in great detail, and Erwin Schrödinger, Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg all acknowledged that it was the study of the Bhagavad Gita that actually deepened their understanding of physics. So I see no separation between, if you like, conventional science and the world of spirit. I see it's all part of a greater whole. And Schrödinger once said something to the effect that there's only one consciousness. There's what he referred to it. There's one singularity phasing. And I really, again, I like that we are not separate. That however we see ourselves, we are actually all part of a oneness. And the great American astronomer, who was a scientist in many fields, Carl Sagan, once said that we are consciousness exploring itself. So, and again, just going to a slightly other direction, I've been influenced a lot by Zen over many years. And there's an old saying that life doesn't judge us, it mirrors how we are. So
say that again.
Life doesn't judge us, it mirrors how we are. So whatever we're seeing in the world is a reflection of something inside us. So the more we can connect with the understanding that life and the universe is a loving place, and the more we respond to that, the more we attract that energy into our lives. It really is. So that's probably a bit of a rambling answer to your question, but it's the best one I can give.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Heaven on earth, that we create. We have the power, we create for ourselves either heaven or hell on earth, basically.
Yeah.
And I love your connection with physics. That was very important to me on my journey as well. Like when I started looking at the physics and these physicists that are talking about the ether and that recognize this connection that we're the science of spirituality somehow So yeah, that's that's fascinating. As a also because like you're Joseph, you're Irish.
I am Irish, yes. I'm not attached to being Irish. I happen to be Irish,
Yeah.
but I see myself as a global citizen.
Okay. But but you grew up in Ireland, and like by so like Ireland being like uh, strongly or used to be at least like strongly anchored in religion. Did you
Mhm.
grow up in a religious upbringing, and how did that, what distinction do you make between religion and spirituality?
Yeah, I grew up in a very, very conservative Irish Catholic home. Um, I've never, one of the things that happened in our family, I've never heard of it in any other family, but up to some point in the mid 60s, every mass in Ireland was an hour long. And at some point, they changed it so that weekday masses were half an hour.
Mhm.
Now, in our house, when Christmas Day happened, we had to go to mass, Christmas mass, before we saw any presents, before we ate anything. That was the rule in our house. So when the mass became shortened to half an hour, we had to stay for two masses to get the full value. Yeah.
God, okay,
Yeah.
that gives us, yeah, like okay, gives us the tone. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And we
like,
had
did
to,
you
yeah.
buy, yeah, did you buy into religion? Or were you never like, were you sort of going through it like a like enduring it somehow, and as soon as you could, you moved on
Yeah.
to something different? Is that what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, like we had to get down on our knees for the rosary every night. And my mother would lead the rosary. And there was the standard rosary, and then there was her extra layer of prayers
Yeah.
which were added on. And they were at least as long as the rosary itself, if not longer. One of which was that communism would never get a grip on Ireland. And even as a child, I thought, wow, I mean that's a bit out there. So yeah,
Wow.
so I moved away. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And nowadays, what how do how do you see religion, and what distinction do you make, between religion and spirituality, if any?
Yeah, I'm not formally attached to any religion at this point. I don't practice any according to any particular tradition. I'll take whatever seems to fit. So I've looked at I've been heavily influenced by Taoism, and I know that's not really a religion.
Yeah.
I've been heavily influenced by Zen. I've looked at various other aspects of Buddhism. I've looked at some aspects of Christianity. I've looked at some aspects of Judaism, a little bit of Islam, and really it comes down to how am I demonstrating my humanity towards other people, regardless of who they are, regardless of their culture, their background, whether they're connected with a religious practice or otherwise. Am I being kind? Am I being honest? Am I being loving? It really comes down to those basics.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, it makes sense when you think like we can extract the base values that are the
Yeah.
base of all of those, and go straight to to cherishing those values without necessarily going through the specific rules of any of them. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't even know why I digress, like, into religion. I don't I don't always do that. Anyway, going with the flow.
Yeah.
Uh, but so career wise, so what where did you start? What did you study? Like how did your path lead you uh, to face profiling? I mean, we need to talk about that too, by the way. But yes, tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Well, I was reading people as a child. I just intuitively knew stuff about people.
Yeah.
It wasn't obviously I remember being as a small child sitting on the floor in my parents' home and just knowing stuff about the adults around me, not like deep intimate secrets, but in terms of their character and who was being really honest and who was bluffing and all of that. And so it was just natural to me to know this stuff. And I just thought, if it's so obvious to me, it must be obvious to everybody else. And as I lost my confidence at a very young age, so um, I became somebody who didn't speak a lot. I observed. So I
Mhm.
spent a lot of time growing up observing people. and probably fine-tuning my intuitive ability without realizing it. And then after, when I left Ireland, I moved to Israel initially to spend time on a kibbutz. Then I found myself in London. And before leaving Ireland, I'd been introduced to whole foods. So I'd gone from eating a standard Irish diet to natural foods. And what I found with the natural foods was that I got incredible energy from what I was eating. And I'd always been fit because I always played a lot of sport, but this was energy on a whole different level. So I had some addresses in London where I could follow up this interest, and one of them was a particular centre I went to, and they had a vegetarian macrobiotic restaurant. So I went along for a meal, and they had tables with benches beside them, and I got some food, sat down at a table, happened to be sitting opposite a guy, got chatting. He was from Denmark, told me he was over to do a course. Just got chatting about it. And then another person came near the table, and my new friend called him over, pointed at me and said, "This guy wants to do the course," which was the first I'd heard of it. It was starting that evening.
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." Yeah. And I assumed I was going to be learning about whole foods. Yeah. And that was part of the course, but I was also introduced to shiatsu. And as part of the shiatsu training, shiatsu is a branch of Oriental medicine, often referred to as acupuncture without needles for anybody who's not familiar with it. But as part of the shiatsu training, I was introduced to facial diagnosis. And when I was introduced to facial diagnosis, it was like just light bulbs flashing everywhere for me, because now it enabled me to explain what I was doing intuitively anyway, but gave a structure to it. And I immersed myself in that over the next 4 years. So I was training as a shiatsu practitioner. I was studying. I was working for one of my teachers in his health food store. So as soon as somebody would come in, he would ask, "Okay, what's his condition? What's her condition?" So it was like full on study and immersion in reading people. And then when I moved with my then girlfriend, now ex-wife, to Hamburg to start working in a center there, that was when I started to practice. Mm-hmm. So I then we lived in Hamburg for 3 years. So I was practicing and teaching there.
Teaching, you mean practicing shiatsu?
Shiatsu, but I was also teaching people to read faces. I was teaching healthcare professionals, therapists to read faces as well. Came back to Ireland, and then I trained initially as a craniosacral therapist. Mm-hmm. And then some years later, I trained as a homeopath. So I practiced as a therapist for like 30 years, but I always saw the certificates as like pieces of paper on the wall. And there was what I was really, the certificates allowed me to do what was natural to me.
Okay.
So I was using the techniques, but I was using them very much in my own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sounds like you very much like you knew you had you knew, maybe you didn't realize consciously, but like the gift was there from early on. Yeah. And eventually it caught back up on you. Alors, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but I like it sounded like a very synchronistic occurrence, right? Yeah. So like the knock knock, who's here? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, that's fantastic. I think for when I hear like stories like this, feel like, oh, sounds easy. Like, how come it cannot be like that easy for everybody? But I don't know. I don't want to say that it's been. I'm sure you've had your ups and downs and challenges.
Oh yeah.
But sounds very straightforward. Like a brief moment of not acknowledging, and then a gentle nudge, and you followed. Doesn't look like you argued much with the signal. You just went and followed the flow without too much resistance, it sounds.
Yeah, it felt like this was my vocation, but I was in my element when I was treating people. Mm-hmm. It was life outside of that was the challenge.
Oh, okay. So that's another TED Talk, like we say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so So just on that, you say, so it felt like a vocation. So for those of us who might very much feel they're not, what does it feel like to be in a vocation that could give people some clues as to what, what instincts they should follow when they feel them in themselves?
Yeah, what I've learned over the years is the body is a teacher.
Mhm.
Many of us learn to be in our heads far too much, and increasingly it seems to be the way with a lot of people, but we need to be in our bodies.
Yeah.
So the little grounding exercise we did at the beginning was just a very small example of just being conscious of being in our body and
Mhm.
learning to speak with the body and learning to listen to the body. And one of the things I have learned is that the body is a metaphor for how we are. The body teaches us so much about what's really going on inside us, what our biggest lessons, our biggest challenges are, what our greatest gifts are, if we're open to it. When I was introduced to shiatsu, I was introduced to the broader traditional Chinese understanding that the mind and the body are one inseparable unit. So they don't think in terms of like heart is a physical organ. They think in terms of like the heart, what does it relate to in terms of the person, in terms of the person's life experience, the person's relationship with, the greater universe, the seasons, food, etc. So that made so much sense to me. And when we have the awareness and the consciousness to tune into our body will tell us whatever we need to learn about ourselves. And when we have pain, discomfort, particularly if it's chronic pain, discomfort, if we tune into that, and if we have the capacity, and I would say the willingness to establish a dialogue with whatever that painful area is, we can, and if we can breathe into it, it will release the knowledge. It will release, like one of the things I typically would do is ask it, okay, what is it you want to show me? What is it you want to reveal to me for my greatest good? Not why are you hurting me? What is it you wish to reveal to me? What do I need to hear for my greatest good? And it's so transformational when we do that. So when we tune into the body with awareness and bring our attention in and do that as a practice, not just on a once off, it's so liberating, it's so illuminating, and we find life becomes simpler, a lot less complicated if we allow it.
Yeah. So very simply, so anyone who's stuck in like a job that sucks the life out of them, for you, the first step is going back to the body.
Yeah.
So what does it look like in practice? It's just like just walking barefoot on the grass, or trying to take a few breaks during the day to take deep breath. What can it be?
Yeah, it can be any or all of those. It can be, a lot of people are obviously very out of touch with their bodies. So even something like going for a massage can be very helpful to have you real, oh, this is how my body actually feels. Walking barefoot, going for a walk in the mountains, the forest, on the beach, walking outdoors, being connected with nature is, I would say, is really non-negotiable.
Yeah.
We need it. That's so innate within who we actually are, where we've come from. Like if you think, for most of our development as humans, we've lived in small groups of people, and a lot of that was actually spent outdoors, connected with nature in one way or another. What we're doing now is unprecedented in terms of our evolution, and we're not wired for it. It's not surprising that there's so much stress, illness, loneliness, etc., etc., etc. So spending time outdoors, I would say, is essential on a very regular basis, and getting natural vitamin D. And then when you also, well, so you can do some meditation outside, You can do meditation indoors, obviously, very easily. Yeah, it's not complicated.
No, 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 no. We make it complicated, probably. Yeah, because once you're gone, so like I'm a specialist. Take it from a specialist of being in one's head. I know a lot about being in my head.
Yeah.
Like once you're up there, like nothing else. Like it's easy to stay there and yeah, and remind ourselves. It's not that easy to remind ourselves to get, because we don't realize. I've like being in our head. Like it's not that we don't realize that we are not necessarily in our body. It's still here. It's not like it's. So yeah, but there is a real difference when making the conscious effort to do something that anchors us back. And yes, I like your idea of massage. Yeah, like touching the boundaries of our own body. Like that's reminding ourselves where we are. And so like a great. I like, yeah, like a simple but so effective advice. And so from shiatsu and like basically working with people and using, as I understand it, using your diagnostic abilities from looking at people and using that as a diagnostic for your treatments. How did that evolve to something that I understand is more like is like that you're using more on its own, or that you're teaching people how to do maybe for like ironically, maybe some more corporate-ish purposes.
Yeah. A lot of what I was doing when I was working as a therapist, it kind of evolved. A lot of the physical work I was doing became more about stillness and holding into body areas. And I started using a lot of dialogue. I don't know if you've come across the animal totem.
That rings a bell. Yeah, I'm in practice really not sure, but like the concept makes sense.
Yeah, the idea of the chakras, for example, you can use the chakras, and you can or you can focus on an area that somebody has a particular problem, and ask them to bring their attention into the area, and then you ask them, okay, just bring your attention into that area of discomfort. If it had a voice, what kind of voice would it have? If it had a color, and then if it were a creature, what kind of creature would it be? And then you build up a sort of an identity around it, and then you ask them to tune into their higher consciousness, and you ask them, okay, if this creature wished to speak, what kind of voice would it have? What would it wish to say to you? What would it wish to hear from you? And you have a whole conversation around that. And what that does is it has a very transformative effect on their experience of the discomfort, and they understand, again, going back to this idea of the body as a teacher. The body reveals what's the underlying challenge or lesson or gift. So I brought a lot of that in, rather than necessarily doing anything particularly physical. But also then, when I would touch somebody, I would know what was really going on for them. They may have made an appointment for a back problem or a migraine or whatever, but when I touched them, I would know what was really going on. And in some cases, I would realize, oh, this person has been really badly abused, or whatever it might be. And I didn't realize it consciously at the time, but I was absorbing stuff from people. Plus, having grown up in a very conservative Irish Catholic family and a distinct lack of emotional expression, I had a lot of my own stuff built up. So after 30 years and divorce and various other things, my body just said, enough, can't do this anymore, because my body started to break down, not in any kind of serious illness way, but I was getting joint problems and viruses, and I'd be out of action for a month, then 2 months, and 3 months, and my body just said enough. So I had to move sideways. And the only thing I was trained to do was to read faces and body language. So I knew there were a number of people using it in the US in particular, in the business world. And I'd already started networking in a business environment prior to that. So it just made sense to sort of move sideways and develop something new from it.
Right. Yeah. So again, like you sort of went with the flow, uh, not that the reminder, not that the trigger was pleasant, but
Yeah.
yes, like it's adaptation, I guess.
Yeah, it was a major adjustment because I saw being a healer therapist as my identity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always loved music, and one of my musical favorites over the years was Miles Davis. And Miles, one of the things Miles said was, "I do what I am," and I really identified with that. And so, having to stop doing what I saw as my identity was a massive shift for me, and it was very challenging. I certainly went into a very dark place for probably a longer period than I would care to remember, to be honest with you. And I even though my practice was a business, I didn't see it as a business. So it's like I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't understand the world I was in anymore. So it was and has been, and in many ways continues to be, a whole process of adjustment that I went into a world that really bewildered me. I mean, the world at large hasn't made sense to me anyway since I was a kid. I've always felt like I'm not sure what I'm doing here. So it's been an ongoing process of learning and opening up, because I realized that I had a fear of being here.
Mm.
And that's a big thing for a guy to acknowledge. So that challenged me as well. Because I knew I was physically strong, and I saw myself as a warrior, not in an aggressive sense, but I saw myself as a guy who could deal with things. And so this loss of identity really challenged me. And I had to, with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of more relationship breakups and financial wipeout, I had to go through a whole long period of adjustment to the point where it's now very much about, oh, I am very much here now.
Okay.
I am here now, and I'm relishing the adventure, and I'm bringing my gifts through in a very different way. Yes, I'm working in a business context. Yes, I'm working with people in negotiation and sales and recruitment, but I'm bringing me to the party now. So I have a confidence in being true to myself and sharing my gifts, and I can give them what they need, and and there's no division between it for me.
Yeah. As you're explaining all of this, was it, yes, you were, like, that was your vocation, but was there an element of uh, somehow hiding or maybe not fully supporting your growth as embodying, because we chose to be a human here, so like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that somehow you were forced into yes, getting more into the well, develop, like you said it, like maybe confidence, or getting out, or being more, even more visible than you used to be, or something like that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work on myself over the years. I've explored a lot of different approaches in terms of inner work, and one particular session in terms of regression, hypnotic regression trance work I did some years ago, brought me back to preconception. And what that showed me, or what that told me, was that I didn't want to be here in the first place, that I was told I had to be here. So there's always been that sense of resistance. And then I know my birth was traumatic. And when my mother was pregnant with me, my father was expected to die. So she was obviously heavily traumatized. I was obviously taking that on in embryo. And then the birth itself was traumatic. So I was born in a state of feeling abandoned. And, so there was this big shell I built around myself. So when I was working as a healer therapist, that was my safe place. But outside of it, it was a whole different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And because in a sense, like, now you're working more in a, you said it, in a business environment,
Yeah.
but also we can argue that then it gives you the opportunity to bring in a much needed gift where it's especially needed.
Yeah.
So on these words, like, how does it, what are you doing in the business world? Like, how is your gift supporting people? And I've read in your bio that you're also trained with FBI,
Mhm.
ex-FBI, so profilers or whatever, like negotiations. So that sounds super intriguing. So
Yeah.
what is it? What happens there? Like, what are you doing in this
Well,
business context right now?
yeah, it's really just about communication, because a lot of what happens, um, technically here, we're speaking the same language, but we're not actually speaking the same language, because you come from your world of experience. I come from my world of experience. And what often happens with any group of people, any two people, is we talk from our default setting. And so many people, they may be excellent at what they do. Some people may even be genius at what they do. But when they communicate it, they tend to assume, and we tend to assume, that the person we're speaking to understands it the way we understand it. And that's very rarely the case.
Yeah.
So I'm helping people to actually speak to each other and understand how the person you're speaking to actually processes and absorbs information, so that you're building a connection rather than talking at them.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, training with some FBI, former FBI trainers. Like one of the areas I've done some training is interrogation. But there's if you like, a popular image of interrogation as being like throwing people against the wall and beating them up and stuff like that. But the best interrogation is actually about being soft and gentle and having a conversation and making people feel at ease, so that they're willing to give you the information anyway. It's not about threat. It's not about violence. So again, it's about connection. And one of the things, again, I've learned is the more I'm at ease with myself, the more relaxed I am within myself, the more I'm connected to my heart, the more that resonates with whomever I'm speaking with, whether it's in a negotiation, whether it's in a sales process, recruitment, or whatever. But then I have to use the art of questioning in the right way. But it's easier to do it if I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
To fine tune the questioning and even the tone of voice I use, so that I'm not asking questions. I'm not, there's nothing aggressive in my tone of voice. I'm speaking softly, so that people feel more at ease when they get that. It sets them at ease within themselves. So it's easier to share whatever is required in that setting, and for both people to feel at ease with it.
Yeah, and like when you're explaining this, it's the more I think about it, and you mentioned it at the start even of the conversation, language is throwing us under the bus in the first place.
Yeah.
Never mind that, even when we're not even from the same native tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it's over the years, as we grow older with more experience, it's become more and more obvious that, yes, we have like we only see the world through our own eyes, like, and assuming, like, so we nearly can, by definition, nearly have a similar view than somebody else, because we have such a different experience of reality anyway. So that's an interesting, when you think about it, that's such an interesting setup for having an experience, if we are considering that we are spiritual beings. And it's like, why would we want to experience this level of like incomprehension in the
Yeah.
first place? Yeah, so what's it, I don't know, what maybe anything most striking that you've learned, or um, working with people or something? Like, do you have any examples of interesting outcomes from helping people with communication that way?
Yeah, I mean, I work in a lot of different areas. And one of the, I mean, a lot of it is just very simple, but we overcomplicate things. A smile goes a long way. A full, what we call the full Duchenne smile, where the eyes light up, and it's not just the mouth. As a photographer friend of mine refers to the what is it, the bridesmaid smile, where it's
Oh,
just the mouth, and you're kind of a little bit jealous of the bride. And there's a lot of, you'll see that a lot with, celebrities and politicians when they're being photographed. It's a purely social smile. It's just the mouth, but the eyes are not. The eyes are not engaged at all. But if we give that full Duchenne smile where the eyes light up, we're actually triggering what's called a mirror neuron response in the other person, whether they're conscious of it or not. And we're lowering our blood pressure, but we're also triggering that in them. So a smile goes a long way. Now, there's one caveat with that. If you're talking to a business audience in Germany or Finland, hold off on the smile.
oh,
That's not natural to them. They're about business. Oh yeah, absolutely.
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you're going in there smiling and they think, oh, this guy's not serious.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
so there's also a
yeah,
cultural filter to apply on the. Okay, that's interesting.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I use silence a lot.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly at ease sitting in silence. And with whether it's with one person in a business setting, and some people can find that really intimidating. I'm perfectly at ease. I can sit silently with somebody for forever, and in a business context, that can be very, very powerful, because invariably somebody will feel compelled to speak and to reveal something. So it can be seen as a clinical and a manipulation, but it's more bringing things forward.
Yeah.
I can give you a few specific examples in terms of reading people. There's one immediately comes to mind as an accountant I did some work with years ago. And I told her, I had a look at her eyebrows, and I told her, you need to stop people talking.
Sorry, say that again. You need to.
You need to stop people talking. You need to tell them only give you a small bit of information at a time.
Yeah.
That if you allow them to give you too much information, you'll be overloaded, and you'll just feel bogged down, overwhelmed, and it won't go anywhere. And when I told her that, oh, I thought it was me. I thought I was being stupid, because people would just pour their information out, and it was just too much for me, and then I wouldn't get the business. So when I told her to stop people talking, about a month later, she called me and said, I'm getting new business every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you knew that just by looking at her eyebrows?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like so we can't hide like I probably asked you this question like but we met years ago. So we can't really hide from you, right?
Well, the thing is, if I'm meeting somebody in a professional context, it's a different matter. But if I'm meeting somebody on a personal level, I just want to have that human connection.
Yeah.
And
You're not looking to read like you think like yeah, get you.
no,
Yeah.
no. Now, we
Yeah.
all do it. The thing is, we all do it. We just don't necessarily realize we're doing it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess so. Like just from a very instinctual survival instinct, we do read people in case someone would would happen to be an axe murderer or something down the
Yeah.
line, right? Yeah, get you.
Yeah, but that goes back to our very ancient ancestry, because again, our ancestors had to know almost instantly whether somebody coming towards them was, friend or foe. They had to know whether somebody was potentially a threat. And the first thing, like, we're obviously on screen now, but when you meet somebody in person, first thing you notice is the hands. Are the
Okay.
hands visible, and what are they doing?
Yeah.
So if you meet somebody and their hands are behind their back,
Mhm.
automatically, subconsciously, you're okay. That's a bit odd.
Yeah.
Are they holding something? So again, if you're meeting somebody, make sure your hand's visible so that it helps them relax.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because even though, because we could argue that, well, that, maybe someone might be shy, like not
Yeah,
knowing
good.
what to do with
Yeah,
their hands. Um, and then, okay, I'm shy, I don't know what to do with my hands. They're like hanging around like in my pockets or behind my back. And then next thing you know, the other person unconsciously interprets it as, oh, potential, this person's not. So then they probably they will have a reaction and like maybe not being forthcoming. And then it validates from the shy person perspective, then it validates their experience
yeah.
that, like maybe they're not, like they're not being liked or they're not. So we can see how like everything is such an unconscious cascade of mutual responses
Yeah.
that don't necessarily reflect the anyone's heart's desire in the
Yeah.
first place. Yeah. So basically, you're helping people to understand these little, to go beyond this little, how do you say, unconscious ways that we're moving. So what I'm assuming is that it helps. So when you're like in business and like people are, there's lots of stress, so you're getting people to, in a way, control their body language so that they're not so that their stress is not controlling their body language, so they can create a different atmosphere and a different vibe, so that the other person can respond and calm down also, as they're interacting. I'm assuming something like that.
Well, I would never look to get somebody to control their body language, because then it becomes robotic.
Yeah.
So it's more if there are obvious things that are just off-putting,
Yeah.
I would look to get them to dial it down.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is to relax and not to be thinking too much about, am I doing this or am I doing that? Because if we start thinking, oh, is that the wrong movement or is this the wrong facial expression, then we're stressed, and then we're giving a message to them, oh, they're stressed about something, have I done something? So it becomes a whole strange circle. And there's a lot of misinformation and myths around body language as well. Like one of the big ones is that, if somebody's lying to you, they won't make eye contact,
Yeah.
which is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
They're more likely to make prolonged eye contact to check whether you're buying their story.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
uh,
And so, question:
mhm.
can what you're teaching people in that context, can it be used towards manipulative or malicious
Yeah,
intent? Yeah.
could be. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I can't control how people use it, but all I can do is be very clear about my intention in the first place. And if I'm working with a group and I've picked that up with somebody, they're not going to tell me openly that that's why they'll be using it. But what I will emphasize is the benefit of real connection. That the more you really connect with somebody, and it's a genuine connection, the more beneficial it is for you, for your business. Because one of the things that comes up, like I do read a lot of business reports and surveys, and one of the things that comes up time and time and time again is the importance of trust. So if you build genuine trust with somebody, you get so much more from it than if they feel they're being manipulated. And generally speaking, if people feel they're being manipulated, even if they aren't, but if they feel they're being manipulated, they'll close the door on you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, would you have from your expertise as a body language and facial profiler, do you have a few pieces of advice in general for people who are now listening to us and possibly stuck in a corporate environment or like, job environment that they're feeling a pressure, or they're not feeling that it's their place, or about they're stressed or unhappy or in any way, shape, or form? Is there anything that you can advise people that could help them?
Yeah, there are several things, and they don't necessarily all particularly relate to body language as such. If we go back to the very beginning of our session,
Yeah.
do some grounding.
Yeah.
do a grounding exercise before you go anywhere. There's a TED talk. I think it may still be the most watched TED talk by Amy Cuddy on body language, and she talks about power poses, high power and low power poses. So whether you're male or female, like the most obvious high power pose is the Superman or the Superwoman pose, where you're standing there with your hands on your hips. And if you do that for a couple of minutes, that helps to instill confidence. It helps you to feel strong. So, and even if it's during the day and you just go into a cubicle in the bathroom and do it for a couple of minutes. So practice that. That's very useful. If you're going into a corporate setting or a big business setting and you're not so sure, find a mentor. Find a mentor, somebody you can look up to, somebody who is willing to give you advice on how to best be there, and make sure that you're not just going in there, oh, please help me. You're asking for advice on how can I what's the best, how can I best perform? How can I best demonstrate my value here? How can I best contribute? So you're not just thinking about, oh, I don't belong here, the imposter syndrome and all that, but how can I best contribute? And if you focus in terms of contribution, automatically you're going to be more relaxed anyway. It may be a challenge initially, because you may be going out of your comfort zone in terms of the work you're doing. But once you get into the practice of doing it and you commit to doing it properly, you'll automatically feel so much more relaxed within yourself and less self-conscious. You just tune yourself more into why you're there in the first place. So they're just a few very basic things. So rather than focusing on body language, I would focus on the overall picture.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and Joseph, is there something that we haven't talked about that we need to talk about? A question I haven't asked you that you think, that you'd want to be answering right now, that's, something, an itch on your heart, basically.
A lovely way to put it, Julie. Yeah, the longer I live, I've obviously been around for a time. I'm not a teenager anymore, or even close to it. And I did once have hair, believe it or not. But the longer I live, the more I realize it is so much about opening the heart to ourselves, opening the heart to life, opening to service. And I don't mean being a doormat for anybody, because discernment is one of my core values. We have to be discerning in terms of the activities we engage in, the people we connect with and spend time with. And that we will come across people, unfortunately, that we just don't connect with and we just don't feel at ease with. And we're better off spending a minimal amount of time with them, if any. But the more we connect with with the heart in the fullest sense, and I don't mean any kind of warm, fuzzy thing, and I'll talk about something specific in a moment there, but the more we connect with the heart, the more we connect with a sense of service and purpose, and with the sense of joy that's possible in daily being. And one of the primary lessons I learned from that was after I separated from my then wife and my kids. I moved into an apartment, and it was a bitterly cold winter. It was a bitterly cold apartment, and I had to walk through a muddy building site to get to it. So it was a huge financial pressure as well. So I was really under stress. And I come across a book by Pema Chodron, the Tibetan Buddhist nun.
Okay, can you say the name again?
Pema Chodron.
Okay.
Pema Chodron.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And you'll find a lot of her stuff on YouTube. But the book I came across was When Things Fall Apart. And there's a lot of lessons and spiritual teachings in it. But one of the particular things, which is a core part of Tibetan Buddhist approach, is Tonglen meditation. And what that is about breathing into the heart. And actually, it sounds counterintuitive, but you're not just breathing into the heart, you're breathing in the pain of the world into your heart.
Okay.
So rather than focusing on your own pain, you're breathing in all the pain you can imagine in the world and bringing it into your heart. And you're breathing out compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredibly difficult at the beginning because I was wallowing in my own loneliness and misery. But the more I stayed with it, what I found was at a certain point, it got tighter and tighter and tighter and more uncomfortable. And then suddenly, it was like this flower opened up. And there was just such a sense of ease and joy. And it was just so transformative. It just requires being in a place of very, very deep trust that you just stay with the process, you stay with the breath, you stay with the intention, and then it allows something magical to happen. And you realize, oh, I've been holding all of that. Mm. And that's been restricting who I am and who I'm capable of being in the world.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's all about sharing. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like being willing to stay in the discomfort.
Yeah.
Trusting that it's temporary, and yeah. So sounds like leveraging the wonderful how do you say, transmuting capabilities of the heart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, that's like, mm-hmm. I'm sure you're well familiar with the Heart Math Institute.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, of course. And they've demonstrated that the heart is a brain. The heart has a brain. Yeah. And the heart is our emotional brain, but it's so much more than that. And when we really connect with the heart and come out of the head, it's it really is magical. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, it sounds like the best possible concluding words. I don't know what what best can we say from there, but from a more practical point of view, though I'm going to share with the audience all the links that I have so that they can find you. What is your favorite way for people to get in touch with you?
I am most active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I do have a Facebook presence, but that's a mixture of work and personal, and my personal stuff can be anything from jokes to whatever.
Okay.
But LinkedIn,
which is fine too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That, and my interests are so varied. Mm-hmm. So, and I can see, that's the thing, I can see the interconnectedness between sort of anything and everything, from music to agriculture to sport to whatever, physics, that it all makes sense in my mind anyway. But LinkedIn is the place where there's a more consistent presence, if you like. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the message is out there. So to get in touch, and the link, I'll share the link, I promise, like, well, I always do, but, and then, and so anyone, if you want to get in touch with Joseph, and actually, do you also also work with people with individuals versus like, not necessarily just companies and stuff like that. So anyone can get in touch to learn about body language, connection, etc. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so the word is out there, people get ready. And so thank you so much, Joseph, for spending this time with us today. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure we shall, have another conversation in the future. I am convinced, whether here or over coffee somewhere.
Look forward to it, Julie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Yes, and thank you, everyone. And I'll see you in the next conversation. Bye.